We are never introduced to Jon Arryn, as when we learn his name for the first time, it's actually just to let us know that he has died. We do later learn that he is Hand of the King for Robert Baratheon, and the Hand of the King is a title that an individual holds, and this individual is chosen by the king to be his second in command. Jon Arryn has been the Hand of the King ever since Robert's Rebellion successfully took place, which is the name of the major war that led to the downfall of the previous regime, House Targaryen. The three great noble houses of Stark, Baratheon, and Arryn rebelled against the crown and former King Aerys II.
I still got PTSD. Fuck the big three. It's just big me.
Known as the Mad King. House Targaryen has been a dynasty that solidified itself in Westeros over 300 years ago, and they have ruled the Seven Kingdoms, roughly the Seven Kingdoms, for 300 years. And these past events lead to the current point in the story where Robert Baratheon and Jon Arryn have ruled peacefully for about 17 years. Now, just to offer some more information about Jon Arryn, he is an older man, and he did play a bit of a father figure role in the childhoods of both Eddard Stark and the current king, Robert Baratheon. That is why Catelyn knew that this would affect Ned. He loved Jon Arryn like a second father. We do know that the Mad King murdered Ned's father. He burned him alive while Ned's older brother, Brandon, was forced to watch. The deaths of Eddard Stark's father and older brother led to Robert's rebellion, as well as the kidnapping of Ned's sister, Lyanna, which we'll get into in a future episode. But this is how the A Song of Ice and Fire wiki describes the events leading to Robert's rebellion. After Lyanna's abduction, her older brother Brandon was enraged and rode to King's Landing, demanding the release of his sister and the death of Rhaegar Targaryen, the eldest son of the Mad King Aerys. Aerys then arrested him for treason and called for his father to come to the capital to ransom him. When Lord Rickard complied, that is then again everyone's father, the Stark's father at the time, Ned's father, Brandon's father, Lyanna's father, Benjen's father. When he complied and showed up to King's Landing, Aerys, now utterly mad, also arrested him for treason. When arrested for treason, Lord Rickard Stark, he demanded a trial by combat. A trial by combat is a form of a judicial system which anyone can ask for, where they themselves can literally fight for their own lives, fighting in a one-on-one match to the death. Or, if you don't wish to fight yourself, you can request a champion to fight for you. When Lord Rickard Stark demanded a trial by combat, Aerys, the Mad King, declared Fire the champion of House Targaryen. He then had Lord Rickard Stark suspended from the rafters of the throne room while pyromancers lit a blaze underneath him. As he burned, his son Brandon was brought into the throne room with a leather cord attached to a strangulation device wrapped around his neck. Aerys then told Brandon his father was a dead man, but there was a chance to save him. A long sword was then placed just out of reach of Brandon, and the more he struggled to reach it, the more the cord tightened around his throat. Brandon Stark strangled himself trying to free his father, who was then roasted alive in his armor. The entire court stood and watched this atrocity take place, Jaime Lannister included, as he was a member of the Kingsguard. Now, we also know Ned loves Jon Arryn because he literally names his second-born son, Jon Snow, after him, just as he named his firstborn son, Robb, after his best friend, the king, Robert Baratheon. In this chapter, Catelyn provides even further context, telling us Ned was sent as a ward into the Eyrie, which is Jon Arryn's domain, where he rules his part of the Seven Kingdoms. And a ward, just as a bit of a definition or explanation of what a ward is, it's kind of like a couple different things. It has a couple different meanings. Generally, it's like a bit of a special guest, right? From one family to another. You can also kind of think of it as kind of a student exchange program where one person of the Seven Kingdoms or one part of Westeros gets essentially sent to another part of Westeros to engage with that different world and their culture and all that, and just try and sort of create a bit of a friendship between the two different houses, and they'll sort of reciprocate that and send someone back. Another way that this is used is also for political prisoners. In order to keep people in check, they will send a member of their household to sort of be a prisoner and sort of keep that person or keep that family in line. All right, just to give a bit of an example, Theon Greyjoy, his family rebelled against Robert Baratheon. He rebelled against the crown the same way Ned and Robert did. But when Theon's father rebelled against the crown, he was unsuccessful. And in order to regain peace or to pay for his crimes for rebelling of treason, right, he sent his last living son over to Winterfell to serve as a political prisoner to Ned Stark. Catelyn also tells us that during his time long ago in the Eyrie as a child, Ned also established his friendship with Robert Baratheon, as he was also sent to the Eyrie around the same time for the same purpose as Ned. Later in life, when Ned lost his father Rickard, his older brother Brandon, and his sister Lyanna, who, mind you, is also engaged to Ned's best friend Robert Baratheon. Both men then demanded justice, to which the Mad King Aerys Targaryen responded by demanding for their heads. It was Jon Arryn who aided both the Direwolf of the North and the Crown Stag of the Stormlands, forming their own three-headed dragon to fight the Targaryens. Now this is where it does get a little fucked up. I won't lie. Fucked up and weird, as Catelyn also informs us, and I quote, "One day 15 years ago, this second father had become a brother as well, as he and Ned stood together in the sept at Riverrun to wed two sisters, the daughter of Lord Hoster Tully." So we now know that the man that Ned sees as a father figure, who's old as shit, is also married to his sister-in-law. The fucked up part being is his wife's sister, it's her younger sister. Now, to provide further context and try to explain, or I guess try to quote-unquote rationalize this, right, is because essentially the man is so old, he has no children, he has no living heir, and he needs to have children ASAP. So since the most important thing when you're of noble blood is basically having a bunch of kids so that your family name and legacy can live on forever, Jon Arryn at that point 15 years ago, as I said, had no heir. So House Arryn is in shambles by that logic and thinking. The advice given to him was to marry a young, quote-unquote, fertile woman so that he is more likely to have a child as soon as possible. And as a result, Catelyn's poor younger sister, Lysa, was forced to marry old man Jon Arryn. But anyways, moving forward, Ned then begins his grief as he's in disbelief over Jon Arryn's passing, who is old, but his death is still unexpected. Catelyn confirms this news by telling Ned that the king himself wrote the letter. Ned then asks about Cat's younger sister Lysa and of their only child Robin. Catelyn informs Ned that they return to Jon Arryn's home in the Eyrie, although Catelyn wishes that Lysa would have gone to their childhood home in Riverrun. I won't get too much into the Eyrie until later on, but the Eyrie is to Jon Arryn what Winterfell is to the Starks. It's his home, and I got into Riverrun a bit previously already in another part of this Catelyn chapter, comparing it to Winterfell. Ned then asks of Catelyn's uncle Brandon His nickname is the Blackfish. So his name is Brandon the Tully, also known as the Blackfish, since despite of also being of Riverrun, he is also in the Vale, serving in the Eyrie as a Knight of the Gate. Now, I also won't be getting too into Brandon the Blackfish this chapter, but I did want to mention him because he is pretty damn cool. There's like 2 living legends of Westeros that are alive and well, right, and will go down as legends once they do die. And I want to say they have a reputation that precedes them. Every man in Westeros wishes that they were him, while every lady is willing to have their bastard child. These 2 men are Sir Barristan the Bold and Sir Brendan the Blackfish. Worth mentioning the 2 of them because I just want to say they're the goats. Come on, they're great characters. Let me know what you think of them. If you agree, if you disagree, but they're great characters. I love Sir Barristan and Sir Brandon Tully. But Ned then tells Catelyn that she should take the children and go to Lysa to comfort her while she grieves. It's honestly a pretty sweet moment as Ned, who I'm pretty sure can be pretty emotionless, tells her, and I quote, "Go to her," Ned urged. "Take the children, fill her halls with noise and shouts and laughter. That boy of hers needs other children about him, and Lysa should not be alone in her grief." That is when Catelyn informs us that she would, but there was more information on that letter. "The king is writing to Winterfell to seek you out." Ned cannot believe it as he hasn't seen his old friend Robert since the Greyjoy rebellion over 10 years ago. The darkness left his eyes. "Robert is coming here?" Ned asked. When she nodded, a smile broke out across his face. Catelyn, however, does not share her husband's excitement as she reflects on something from earlier in Chapter 1 in Bran's POV. She keeps a straight face to not put any stress onto Ned because she's real as fuck, but she does think of the direwolf pups now in possession of their children, more specifically the dead mother of the direwolf pups. And I quote, "A direwolf dead in the snow, a broken antler in its throat." Dread coiled within her like a snake, but she forced herself to smile back at this man she loved, this man who put no faith into signs. As I mentioned earlier and in my Chapter 1 video on Bran, this is our first major instance of foreshadowing being put into play by good old Georgie boy. Since we do know that the direwolf represents House Stark and a crowned stag / deer represents House Baratheon, Catelyn is worried of what's to come, but she keeps this to herself as she knows her husband won't entertain such nonsense. Catelyn then tells Ned to send a letter to Benjen so that he may come to Winterfell as well. Benjen is Ned's younger brother. Reality begins to dwell on Ned as he realizes they are in no condition to play host, let alone to the king and his party, as it's massive. They begin to speculate that they need to prepare to host for hundreds of people. This includes Cersei Baratheon, better known as Cersei Lannister, the queen as well as their children and the queen's brother Jaime and Tyrion. Upon hearing this information, and I quote, Ned grimaced at that. There was small love between him and the queen's family. Catelyn knew it. The Lannisters of Casterly Rock had come late to Robert's cause when victory was all but certain, and he had never forgiven them for it. So, as I mentioned earlier, Houses Stark, Baratheon, and Arryn rebelled against House Targaryen, which is treason, since House Targaryen held absolute power over everyone in Westeros. I did already cover in the previous part of this chapter that the Starks, they swore loyalty to House Targaryen, right? So for by all intents and purposes, to then rebel against the crown and declare war on House Targaryen is technically treason. And this is why Robert's rebellion was such a big deal, as if they failed, each of their families would be sentenced for death, if not worse. Ned, knowing this, remembers the great House Lannister remaining complicit to the Mad King and judges them for it, as the Honorable Ned Stark finds it cowardly that they did not either die with their king or turn against him sooner when there was still work to be done. As the chapter finishes up, one last thing that I want to point out is Cersei, despite being married to Robert Baratheon and officially being the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, still gets regarded to as the Lannister woman by Ned, which Catelyn then warns him. And I quote, "Please, Ned, guard your tongue. The Lannister woman is our queen, and her pride is said to grow with every passing year." Now, this is another huge moment of foreshadowing for not only the narrative, but for Cersei's character, as she is and will always be a Lannister, for better or for worse, and we will learn more of what it means to be a Lannister and their nefarious ways coming soon in a future chapter. But as we finish this one, Ned and Catelyn then begin to realize their problems have only just begun, with Ned closing out the chapter saying, "Gods, how are we going to feed them all? On his way already, you said? Damn the man. Damn him and his royal hide."
Now that we have finally finished chapter 2, Catelyn, we can get ready for chapter 3, which I will be posting next week, as we are finally introduced to Daenerys Targaryen.